All join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. And keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. All right, good evening, everybody. Good to see you all here. Thanks for being here. Anyone here for the first time, potentially? Want to share anything?
Just happy to be here.
Actually, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, just happy to be here and ready to take in any knowledge.
I haven't got much knowledge for you, man. But I'll do my best, Welcome.
Thank you.
Anybody else here for the first time? Want to share why they're here? Anyone had a really rough day? None of you when you're still here? Come on, thank you. Do you want to share anything about it?
Brutal physical day at work. So
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're here. Did you want to?
Similar brutal mental day for me.
Yeah. It's tough, right? It's just tough. Just constant. Constant challenges, difficulties, conflicts. And the beauty of it is we then have the opportunity to just sit with ourselves and be with ourselves. So that's always a fun practice. But I think, something I shared with somebody recently, it was as many going through challenges and struggles and kind of been on this path for a while. Especially if you're new to Buddhism, that it's not so much about learning, like, what is all this Buddhist stuff about? I get it. Those are kind of tips and tools and things to help us. But ultimately, what it's trying to get us to realize is that it's just a mirror. And so this practice 100% is looking back at ourselves. And sometimes that's pleasant, and sometimes that's unpleasant, and sometimes that's kind of neutral and somewhere in between. So, and the last thing I'll say before we sit is, when you do look at yourself, I think about this a lot, with my journey through life and my journey through Buddhism, is that, man, I've done a lot of bad stuff, like a lot. I've done a lot of things that are really just terrible. A lot of people that I've harmed, a lot of people that I've hurt, a lot of just kind of emotional destruction towards myself and others. And one of the things that I had to really, I think, embrace and embody in this practice as the mirror reflecting back on yourself, at least this illusion of self, is to have a little bit of gentleness and kindness towards yourself. Because very often we can do things that really do harm others. And that's not good. But at the same time, we have to be gentle with ourselves and begin to explore how we can maybe change some of those things. But if we continue to have hatred towards ourselves, then we're causing harm to others, and we have hatred towards ourselves. And then we just get stuck in this vicious cycle of having more hatred towards self and causing more harm towards others. So sometimes you have to kind of stop and have a little love and appreciation and gentleness towards yourself for just being a human who's screwed up. Any of you ever screwed up? All of us, constantly. I mean, we probably all screwed up today multiple times. I don't know, maybe you didn't, but I definitely did, So learn to be okay with yourself. And that doesn't excuse the things that we've done. It doesn't make them right. It doesn't justify them, but don't forget to have a little bit of gentleness and love towards yourself, because you're just human and life is not easy and it throws crazy challenges at us constantly. So don't forget to have some care for yourself also. All right. So with that, we'll go ahead and we'll start meditation practice. To all of you online, welcome. Feel free, there's a chat box somewhere on the screen. Feel free to say hello, introduce yourselves, whatever it might be. A few things with meditation before we begin, especially for those who might be brand new. Nothing's going to happen to you. All right, you're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences, most likely. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit, we're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of it. So posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion, often it helps. Slide in the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed. Hands can be on the knees or in the lap. Eyes are open or closed, whatever works for you. Same thing with the mouth. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with the eyes closed, if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Where's your mind? Return to breath. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgments from the practice. Just sitting, breathing. Keeping the mind alert. Aware of each sound. Each thought. Each physical sensation. yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. And most important, the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after, compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being no different than any one of us who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means very simply for all of us, regardless of where we come from or what we believe in and where we think we're going, our whole life is filled with things that happen. And we react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. That's our life. And so this practice is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. So all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means in your respective lives, which are very busy. But learning to get through our days without being disturbed, distracted by everything and everyone that we encounter on a daily basis. It's not easy. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape. It is direct perception into the present moment. And it is learning to be with the present moment as it arises. Pleasant, unpleasant, neutral is what the Buddha talked about. Pleasant moments, sensations, emotions, feelings. Unpleasant and neutral. That's what we get. And each day is just a pretty crazy range of those emotions and sensations and thoughts. And so we continue to practice. For me personally, this practice has probably been the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my entire life. Because it created a condition where I had to do things, for the most part, the exact opposite of how I did things my entire life. And that's difficult. But the misery, the suffering, the depression was no longer bearable. This is going back 19 years. So for me, this practice became a way to finally just be honest with myself and really look at what am I doing, what am I thinking, what am I saying? The Buddha called this karma. So for me, it's really simplifying this practice and say, okay, well, what do I think all day long? What do I say all day long? And what do I do all day long? And then can I recognize that and be real with what that actually is? And then slowly work to change where it was necessary, which was pretty much all of it. So wasn't much to determine what to keep or what to get rid of. But it takes time. So as I alluded to at the beginning, as you're on this journey, whatever you want to call it, this journey of meditation, Buddhism, spiritual practice, whatever that is to you, like I said, be kind and patient with yourself as you go on it, because if you really work on it, it creates situations for you to kind of explore the depths of your heart and your mind, and that can be pretty messed up at times, you know. Not assuming that in any of you, I'm just, of course, always reflecting on myself. So once in a while, somebody resonates with it. So with that, I'll pause and really just open up to questions. For me, I always prefer to respond to what's on your mind. Questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. Same thing as well for those online. Again, welcome. Feel free to type in any questions you'd like, and happy to address them as well.
Can I ask about your practice?
Yes.
So how often do you practice? Do you have just your daily early riser and meditation, or do you do it whenever you have time?
Yeah, it's a good question. So ultimately, this practice, I'll eventually answer your question directly, but I'm going to ramble for a bit before I do, because the direct answer to that is it changes every single day. But I think for me as a practitioner, the more important piece to that question is what is practice? And like you said in your question, which is what 99 out of 100 people will ask, referring to practice, we often refer to what? Meditation. I would say meditation is the smallest part of my practice. It is a daily practice, and like I said, I'll get to logistics in a minute, but I think it's super important for all of us to understand that when we look at what practice actually is, for me, it's the practice of the paramitas. And this is what the Buddha taught, as the word paramita translates to perfection. It's not about being perfect, so don't be fooled by that word. But this is, in Buddhism, we call the bodhisattva practice, the bodhisattva path. And this is what my master, what she taught me, what she lived by, and what she has instructed me to live by. And I attempt to live by that every single day, and I fail miserably every single day. But I do that with a smile, and I continue on. And what these practices are is the practice of generosity, morality, patience, diligence, then concentration, which is number 5 in the paramitas, and then wisdom. So for me, that is every moment, every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, is the practice of those paramitas. The absolute practice of recognizing when am I being generous When am I being greedy? Second one, morality. When am I being honest and moral and ethical? And when is that completely out the window and am I lacking that, right? Patience. When am I being completely patient with everything in my life and those around me? And when am I just completely ignoring patience and expecting myself or somebody else to have it done immediately? Right? Diligence. How hard do I work? Not just at the spiritual path, but everything else in my life, right? Cultivating relationships with family and friends and, a place like this. And the recognition of how hard am I working and when am I just like, watching Netflix for 3 hours. Not that any of you do that, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. It's not about being like, this isn't about being a good or bad Buddhist, right? Buddhists can watch Netflix too, right? But it's recognizing that where's my effort at, right? So that's diligence. Concentration. And again, this comes back to the meditation practice, but not just seated meditation. Where's my level of concentration and focus in everything I'm doing? If I'm having a conversation with someone, if I'm working, if I'm driving, whatever it is, where's my concentration at? Am I able to hold my attention and give that person, place, or thing 100% of my undivided attention and care? Can I do that? And when am I doing well at it? And when am I completely just ignoring everything somebody is saying? And the last one is wisdom. And so it's the practice of wisdom, which for me, I look at the Buddhist teachings on wisdom, and the Buddha praised Subhuti, his great disciple of, many years, for his discourse on wisdom, and Subhuti said nothing about what wisdom actually was. So for me, I don't sit here and try to define what is ultimate wisdom. I've always looked at wisdom with regard to the paramitas in two ways. One is if I practice the first five, generosity, morality, patience, diligence, and concentration, then that is helping me cultivate ultimate wisdom. The other way to look at wisdom is, as the Buddha taught, it's called the three poisons. The second noble truth is we suffer because of greed, anger, ignorance. And he said you overcome ignorance with the practice of wisdom. So in applying wisdom to my life, you ever done anything? What's your name? Lena? Lena, have you ever done anything really just ignorant and foolish and harmful? Never? Nice. I've always wanted to meet somebody who'd never done that. Well, it's a pleasure to meet you. Welcome to the Dharma Bum Temple. So that one time, like, when you were in second grade and you did something like that, remember that? Yeah, that was, did you, maybe not in second grade, but my point is when we do things that are completely horrible and ignorant and all that kind of stuff, do you usually know it? No. Really? Think about that for a minute. Like, are you aware that what you're doing is potentially harmful to self and others, or really just not a great thing to do? Are you aware of that? Sometimes. Okay, so let's focus on the sometimes. So the times that you are aware of that, if you did that less, by default, what would that mean? More wisdom. So for me, the practice is, again, the first five paramitas, and then recognizing when we do things that are kind of ignorant, harmful, destructive, whatever it might be, and doing those less. Does that make sense? So for me, that's the practice. I grew up with lots of anger, lots of rage, just lots of fights, lots of trouble. And a great expression I heard years ago was an angry person who meditates is just an angry meditator. So it's not just about this meditation practice. It's about recognizing what else is going on. Otherwise, we're just going to sit in meditation with all of our stuff, which is fine, but we want to work to transform that. So for me, I do a daily meditation practice, right? I've been, for lack of better words, preaching 5-minute meditations for the last 15 years. So I I mean, I could be like dead almost, and I would still get a 5-minute meditation in, right? But I'll sit every morning, maybe 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes, but the amount of time is irrelevant. The amount of time you sit or any of us sit is irrelevant. What matters is that you do it. So for people who don't have a daily meditation practice, I suggest doing this 5 minutes a day. Do you have a daily practice right now? Like a daily meditation?
Yes, but on and off.
On and off, okay. So here's my suggestion, right? Would you ever think that 5 minutes of a meditation is enough? Typically, like before you were sitting here right now. No, most people would think I need to sit for 30 minutes, I need an hour, I need to go to a class, I need candles, I need incense, I need all the stuff. The only thing you need to meditate is a crazy mind. And again, I don't know you, but you know, our minds, if you're human, tend to be pretty crazy. So you don't need anything. Also, if I say to somebody, sit 20, 30, 40 minutes every single day, not going to happen. You got a busy life, right? We don't have that time. So be practical with it, right? Tell yourself 5 minutes. Just do 5 minutes every single day. If you wake up at 6 a.m., wake up at 5:55. Splash water in your face, get up, brush your teeth, whatever it is, and just sit for 5 minutes. If you can't do 5 minutes, then do 2 minutes. But stop at 5 minutes and do this every day for 3 weeks. And then take a week off. Why would I suggest taking a week off? You can say that out loud.
It's very relevant, but I think since you are getting into a practice, like a routine, human brain needs 21 days to get accustomed to something, but giving a break is like when you come back more like hungry, I guess.
Right.
Getting more.
Yes. So the break allows you to recognize what it's like when you're not doing it. It also allows other people to recognize what you're like when you're doing meditation versus what you're like when you're not doing meditation, right? And when we do meditation, we tend to be calmer, quieter, gentler, kinder people. So those around us tend to thank us for it. So it can reinforce that, hey, I want to get back to it. And then for people who have a longer practice, there's nothing wrong with sitting 10 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour or whatever it might be. There's nothing that's bad with that. But realistically, we're not nuns and monks living in a mountaintop monastery somewhere where we can dedicate 6 hours of our day to just seated meditation. And then another 4 hours a day to walking meditation. And then another 3 hours a day to studying sutras, right? Just 5 minutes is going to be hard enough for you, I promise. So stick to that. Is that helpful? Yeah. Yeah.
So when we're starting, right, you were mentioning life will bring situations that obligate us to look inside. Because this world is a mirror, what is inside us, right?
Yes.
So trying to recognize what is it that our mirror is trying to teach us. At least for me personally, I find it a little bit difficult to difference like what is it that I'm seeing myself in the mirror. For example, if this means that I have to change this inner belief that I'm not good enough, or is that I am at this moment present, probably like you said, being very wise of my time into introspection. So how do you recognize that? Like, what is it trying to mirror to tell you about what you have to change?
Okay. Good question. Let me just kind of try to paraphrase that for our millions of YouTube fans. So the question is about earlier how I referenced using this practice as a mirror. And you talked about when you're doing inner reflection as an example, sometimes you recognize things that, thoughts that arise, like maybe you're not good enough, or other thoughts that may arise And so how do you kind of distinguish on what to do with those thoughts that arise? Is that
Yes.
Yeah.
Because it's, what is the lesson here, right?
right? What is the lesson? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think at the beginning stages of this specific practice, as far as recognizing what you're seeing, what's being reflected, for a while doing this, I don't necessarily suggest trying to change too much, but just like an honest reflection. And the thing that the why, to me, the mirror is such a perfect metaphor, and I don't know where I learned that years ago. All of us Buddhist people just steal everything from everybody else. That's just how this works, right? We're all learning from everybody else. But when you look in a mirror, the thing about looking in a mirror is the moment you raise your hand in the mirror, what happens? The hand goes up. The moment you tilt your head in the mirror, what happens? Your head tilts. So the reflection is just ultimate truth. It's not like manipulating it. It's not trying to force it. It's not trying to change it. It's not trying to correct it. It's just seeing it for what it actually is. And what I think your question is about is like, okay, when you begin to see things, what do you do then with that knowledge or information, or how do you change? What I'm suggesting is before you even do that, begin to practice actually seeing truth in your thoughts, is what I'm referring to. Truth in your words and truth in your actions. And what I mean by that is not changing, but reflecting on, wow, these are really my thoughts. Okay, leave it at that. Not then running to immediately try to change them. And I get it, this practice is about, being kinder, gentler people, but watch it for a while. Use the practice to recognize, well, how am I speaking to people? How am I communicating to people? Whether it's verbally, or whether it's via text or social media or whatever it might be. Like, how am I expressing language towards people? And then the third piece of karma is the action. How am I physically moving through the day? What am I physically doing throughout the day? Just observe this for a while. One of the challenges that we get into, especially when we're newer to practice or wanting to make, meditation, spiritual journeys a part of our lives, is we often instantly want to fix everything in 6 weeks. Our heads have been a mess and our hearts have been a mess a long time. It's going to take more than 6 weeks to fix this stuff. So if we see this reflection and we're immediately trying to change it, part of that is also creating this condition where we're looking at ourselves and we're like, I'm terrible, I need to fix this. Just drop the label of I'm terrible and just recognize, wow, I do a lot of things, think, say, and do things that harm myself and harm others. And watch that for a while. That's not fun, right? Like the Buddha says, we suffer because of greed, anger, and ignorance. And we practice overcoming greed, anger, ignorance with generosity, compassion, and wisdom. This is very fundamental, basic teachings. But what that means is if this stuff is of interest to us, and we recognize that we want to change things in our lives, that means we have to, for a while, at least begin to own up to and the truth, which is, wow, we're greedy, we're angry, and we're ignorant. And this is not pleasant. So can we view that with loving kindness and compassion? And ultimately, something I heard years ago somebody say, which I thought was really great, and I just used the phrase that I'm going to suggest we don't use, but instead of saying, I am greedy, or I am angry, or I am ignorant, right? Because the I is an illusion anyways. Just recognize the actions and say, I am doing things, or I am thinking things, or I am saying things that are greedy, angry, ignorant, instead of labeling that as who we are. Does that make sense? So I don't know if that's helpful, but yeah. And if you do that for 3 years, then you'll know what to do. like that. Quick moment. So there's a question here from, I think, I don't know if it says Rosebud, but what is the most effective way to calm the mind or to sit peacefully with yourself after experiencing a highly traumatic event? Yeah, another great question. I just want to look at the words you chose. What is the most effective way to calm the mind or to sit peacefully with yourself after experiencing a highly traumatic event? All right. The reality is our entire lives are going to be filled. I hate to break it to y'all, cover your ears if you don't want to hear this, but our entire lives are going to be filled with traumatic events. So what sits with me when I hear and I read this question is not about the effective way to calm the mind and sit peacefully with yourself after experiencing a highly traumatic event, but to ask yourself, can you calm the mind to sit peacefully with yourself when you're not experiencing a traumatic event or shortly thereafter? That's hard enough. Now, maybe you can, but for me, that's where I start. For me, it's not about sitting there and thinking, what are these traumatic events and how am I going to recover from them? It's recognizing that it's hard enough when we're not experiencing a traumatic event to sit with ourselves peacefully and be calm. Okay? And if you ask yourself, how often are you really peaceful inside? How often can you really sit with just you and sit with yourself and be calm and okay with just you? Most people can't. So when things are going well and we're having a good day, that's hard enough to do. I think it's important to recognize that on a very practical level, because I do want to give you some practical response about what to do when we experience a traumatic event, because we experience traumatic events daily, and some of them more extreme than others. And I think instead of trying to be peaceful and calm at that moment of a traumatic event, just sit without the expectation of being peaceful or calm. When traumatic things happen, you're not going to feel, most likely, peaceful. When traumatic things happen, you're not most likely going to feel calm. So we're kind of setting ourselves up for a major disappointment when something traumatic happens, and then all of a sudden we're like, well, how come I'm not peaceful yet? I've been doing that Buddhist thing for 3 years. Why isn't it working? Try to be calm and peaceful just by yourself. And then when you've kind of become better at that, then we can apply that when traumatic things happen. And I also want to point out, just for those who may be new or whatnot to this practice, engage in society, engage in, Thich Nhat Hanh coined the phrase engaged Buddhism. There's so many social justice issues, human rights issues going on in the world right now that are incredibly toxic and harmful to people. And Buddhist practice is not about ignoring that. It's not about sitting on the sidelines and just saying, well, I'm Buddhist, everything's going to be okay. Right? Engage. When we see traumatic events happen, observe what's happening with you. That's a wonderful time to kind of reflect, the mirror example, to reflect on, what is this making me feel? What is this making me think? And then act from that. But act from a place of love and compassion and kindness. The feelings of anger and rage that arise when traumatic things happen, that's there. And we should act on that, but in a kind and gentle way. But fiercely. So, hopefully that's helpful. All right, so I'm going to close on that. Let me see. Just want to see what Molly shared here. Feel what you feel and feel compassion for yourself. I say to myself, all will be well. Yeah, so feel what you feel and feel compassion for yourself, and tell yourself that all will be well. All right, so on that note, we'll join palms and we'll close. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to the more than 6 million lives that have been lost during this pandemic, and to their family and friends who continue to suffer, and to all of those in Ukraine and surrounding areas who suffer at this time due to lives that have been lost, and to those in Texas who lost lives, children and adults, and all those who suffer. May we all be at peace. May we all be free from suffering. All right. Do we, either one of our volunteer hosts, want to do the announcements? Do you want to? Sure. Thanks, Amy.
Hello, everyone. I'm tonight's host. My name is Amy. We opened the Dharma Bum Temple 15 years ago to introduce Buddhism practice to those who show up. Those of us who lead are not nuns, monks, gurus, masters, or teachers, and are not looking for students. We are simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice with others. Just about every night of the week, we have different classes led by different people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone battling addiction, drugs, alcohol, or anything else for that matter. A family sangha for parents, kids, toddlers, and teens, which currently meets once a month. And we also offer half-day silent retreat the first Saturday of the month with an RSVP required. Everything we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on our website and also posted in the entryway above the shoe rack. We also have a lending library. If you see a book that you like, feel free to borrow it, then bring it back whenever you're done with it. Please straighten your seat or cushion before you head out, and if possible, if a few people could stay to close and latch the windows, these side windows, that would be helpful. Thank you for being here. We wish you well and hope to see you all again.
A+. Thanks all.